I actually had envisioned this very differently, right? Like I actually saw like husbands and wives like, oh, honey, like kind of reconciling. I saw this beautiful breakthrough come, but we didn't have that. You're in an argument with your spouse, right? And it might have happened like right here at Valentine's Day. You guys like, of all days, like some of you guys are laughing, like, yeah, that did happen, right? But like of all days, right? And so you leave the house and you're upset and you're like, man, and so you just don't even reconcile and you get to work and you're just, oh man, we gotta make this good. Like today's Valentine's, what am I doing? And so you're like, okay, I'm gonna call her during break, and you don't feel like it, but like, okay, I'm gonna call her. And so you go to your lunch break, you don't go with your friends, you stay in your car, you grab your lunch, and what you decide to do, right, because you had this big argument, you're like, forget it, I'm going to cancel the reservation, you're just like, in this moment, you don't want to do it, but even though it's her fault, no, I'm just kidding, even though it's one of your fault, maybe it's probably both of your fault, right, what you decide to do is you act. You're like, okay, the affections will come later, so I'm gonna go ahead and make that call. But even before you make the call, maybe what you do is you take out your phone, but before calling, you jump on Facebook, and you look at some old engagement photos, right, and you remember that time, because you want to make that apology more sincere. You remember that time when you were much more in love, right? And you have that moment and you recapture that a little bit. And then not only do you stop there, but you take a moment to take, like maybe a minute, to play a song that might actually also put you in the mood to make that call, right? And that song might be something like this. All right, so we're going to have a little volume on this one because this is a good song. I'll just stop it there for now. I actually had envisioned this very differently, right? Like I actually saw like husbands and wives like, oh, honey, like kind of reconciling. I saw this beautiful breakthrough come, but we didn't have that. But that's okay. But the lyric I want to home in on a little bit there is where he says, "But me, I fall in love with you every single day." And the way for us to fall in love with our spouses, but also our God, is by literally taking action and getting the right things through our senses and through our hearts, right? Yes, let's keep thinking and reading books and all of that to the glory of God, but let's sense the right things. But in order to sense the right things, we need to put out things in the culture that are good, true, and beautiful, right? And so there's this dual thing that's going on in terms of what we put out in culture and what we sense in our lives. Okay, let me move here to the second way, in addition to taking literal action, the second quick way I want to mention of how do we bring about these fancy things called second-order desires, like make it practical. Well, the first is taking literal action, but the second is being in community with others. There's no one who's called to be a Lone Ranger Christian. The reason I know that for sure 100% is doctrine of the Trinity. We're made in His image, and God's a community. He's a Trinity, right? And no one's called to be by themselves. My wife and I joined a church about a year and a half ago after being back from England, and we finally came to a home church that we settled on. And a few months later, we joined a small group, which I highly, highly encourage, obviously. But as we joined this small group, I'll be 100% honest with you, my first order desire for like holiness, it wasn't like, oh, you know what? I want to be X% holier by May of next year, right? It wasn't like that. It wasn't bad. It was like, I want to be more wicked, 33%, like it wasn't like that. It was kind of a neutral. It was just like, okay, cool, let's join this church, let's join this small group, this is great. But I kid you not, over the course of 5, 6, 7 months, all of a sudden, I actually found myself, without even like being super intentional about it, but because I was surrounded with other godly folks, I found myself finding sin just less tempting. And the grace of God was just sweeter in my life. And here's one reason why. You and I oftentimes, we do text accountability, right? Like, hey, pray for me. Hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing all right. How about you? But whereas when you actually know you're going to see the person face to face, that's a whole different level. Like God came to us incarnate, and we're supposed to be incarnated in embodied community, not just texting community, right? So I really believe in the importance of all of us so I was seeing my buddy John, a couple of days later, and we were texting, and he's like, hey, how's it going? Back and forth. And I knew I was going to see him when we meet on small group. And even though I didn't know he was going to ask me, hey, how is this going on? Or how is this part of your life? Because just the sheer fact I knew I was going to see him, that helped me get through some of these struggles in the earlier part of the week, right? There's something different about being in community. And these are two ways I think we can bring about these second-order desires. Okay. Moving to the third point, and that's this.